It's one of those Fridays where we have a lot of things to talk about. And one of those topics today will be the future of women in politics. How are they being represented? Are they being represented? And even where they are represented, are their voices being heard? Are we making any leadway as women in politics? Joining us to talk about this for the next few minutes is Adora Sydney Jack, who is the founder, Gender Strategy Advancement International, and author of the bestseller, Politics, X, and Power. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you so much, Carla. It's good to see you.
So it feels like the movement of women in the political space in Nigeria is pretty gradual. But there are some wins that are being made. But those wins, are they opening more doors for us to make more impact, especially when it comes to politics in Nigeria?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I think that the conversation on gender equality and women's representation lies at the heart of our constitutional democracy. And when we're talking about constitutional democracy, we're talking about equal rights. And when you think equal rights, that brings me to answering your question. How far are those rights equal, especially in the representation of women's voices? Let's start from the legislature. Nigeria ranks about 180 out of 185 in the Inter-Parliamentary Union statistics for a country that its president chairs ECOWAS, or a country that is considered the largest African country. I think that is a little tragic. And I say this because when you're thinking about wins, I consider wins when women's voices are part and parcel of policy, part and parcel of political decisions, and they are also seated at a table where legislative advice is given, and we don't have that in the legislature.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on that particular point.
Yeah.
Whose fault is it?
Now,
was there anything that stopped women from running for office? Are there rules that stopped women from running for office?
Now, it's not about rules, Kayla. It's about, one, the kind of patriarchal politics we've practiced for decades. And I'll give you an example. Countries who are urging closer to closing the gap. I mean, people talk about Rwanda. Rwanda is far. Let's talk about Andorra. Let's talk about countries like Namibia, Angola, even countries like Sri Lanka and Sierra Leone are edging closer. Why? Because there is a constitutional engagement on reviewing how women get into the political space by offering environments, ecosystems that are enabled by quota and also looking at ranking. Nigeria stands a chance in its history to be able to open the doors for more women's voices to be heard. Considering that at this time in history, the National Assembly is about to go into public hearing on the special seats, which advances the numbers of women for 74 seats in the legislature, at the Senate and at the House of Assembly and also at the House of Rep. However, if we do not take an intentional step to be able to look at how do we get women in the room, we're talking about 4 cycles of election, which is about 16 years of temporary measures, getting women in the legislature, having their voices heard, and then watch the numbers improve. Kila, I ran elections in 2019, and I'm talking from experience, from a system where there was heightened misogyny, a system where even within the political party, you had to prove twice as hard to be able to consistently show up, to say that you can run where the men are running, even with men who had a level of mediocrity beyond understanding. So, and you know, with all due respect to our male folks, you know, it's always been a generics of the boys' club for so long. And so we're saying, let's look at participation, let's look at inclusion from a quartering eye, where we can enable young women, women with disability, and women and those who have capacity to be in this space. I believe that, you know, if we don't do something deliberate, killer, we might have this 360 degrees conversation of are women not coming out? Are they not joining political parties? But what's important is the political will. And that political will can only be enabled if we have legislation backing it.
So the conversation around this quota.
Yes.
I know it does come with its own little drama.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people, when they think about the concept of special seats, who, why? What of the men that were occupying those seats before? Where are they, chopped liver? Are you going to send them away? You know. So the conversation around special seats and the reason why we look at countries like Rwanda and other parts, and we don't understand, we don't realize that what happened was at some point they decided to put a quota. They decided to put a quota and say, okay, so women occupy so and so percentage of these elective positions. So what happened was that women were the only people running for those seats. And then it grew into. So when you go to Rwanda and you see women everywhere, running everything, you think they just loved women. No, at some point
they had to take steps.
They had to take that step. But talk to us about some of the hitches being faced with the special seats conversation in Nigeria.
Okay, so let me do a backgrounding first of what the special seat is for those who are watching, and I'll take it by metrics. First of all, it is a bill that proposes alterations to the Constitution for sections 48 and 49 to provide one special seat reserved exclusively for women. And of course, that is in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. And then an alteration of section 91 to provide for 3 special seats for women exclusively at the Houses of Assembly. And this represents, of course, spreads across the 3 senatorial districts. And then we're talking about amendment to section 71 and 77 and 117 of the section, which now talks about establishing, this is just what you said, special constituencies reserved exclusively for women, and ensuring that direct election into and participation into legislative processes are reserved for women at both the federal and at the state level. So that is just sort of like, you know, an abridged interpretation of the special seat bill. However, in terms of whether there will be challenges or whether there will be pitfalls, that's why we are having conversations. And remember that there was the 5 gender bills in the 2022 where women, you know, marched, you know, in their numbers to the National Assembly demanding for 5 gender bills, which included, you know, extra seat bill of 111, you know, appointee seats position, and, you know, indigenship rights, citizenship rights, and etc. However, we saw that bill thrown out. Those bills were thrown out, even in the glare of the first ladies and women within the institution. And the conversation was go back and rethink the strategy. Go back and rethink the process and see whether we can talk about having the seats first and using the inclusion and voices of women coming to the legislature to begin to amplify other areas of demand. There will be cultural conversations around this. There will be traditional conversations around this. In fact, there will be religious interpretations for some around this. And of course, the ego conversation by the men's club around this. But is it about fairness? Is it about justice? Is it about inclusion? And in total, is it about democracy? The answer is yes, because you cannot have half of your population with votability, like I like to say, able to vote and unable to be voted for because they do not have the numbers sitting at the table. And I think this is where the conversation is. And I'm hoping that when people think of special seats, it's not just special seats for women, it's special seats for justice, special seats for inclusion, special seats for a whole-rounded democracy, for not just us, Kila, sitting here, but for the next generation of girls who will inherit all of those processes. And for me, that's where my heart is.
Before we wrap up, when you're taking a look at our landscape, our political landscape, and how women are being represented, and then the issues surrounding the women who are in that political landscape at this time, what kind of message do you think the Nigerian political landscape is sending to young girls who may want to join that political landscape at some point in their lives?
I think they have an opportunity to redo the strategy, to redo the thinking. You would say that history sets the pace for you to reinterpret what the future would bring. And I think that's what young people should do, to look at what to do differently and how not to do it given the opportunity. And for those who are leading and in those spaces, I think it's also a good time to have introspection, to understand that when you are in the public office representing Nigerians, you're not just representing Nigerians alone in Nigeria, you are also a global brand. And how does that demarket us? That's the questions that they need to answer. But going forward, young people should not be discouraged. And most importantly, Nigerian women have the ability to rewrite history. The 2027 elections are coming. Kayla, I didn't see a woman at the Anambra, elections are coming. I haven't seen a woman, throw up, her heart to say she's in the ring. And that's because you also find that the political space, political parties are not also enabling participation because the quota already exists in the party constitution. So when we do not have political will within the political parties. Women are not able to make it even when they have nomination at the primaries. And the only way to really meet these and bridge the gap is to have a legislative conversation that now opens up the space and say, we are all going to run for this seat and make sure that a woman emerges. And I think that's the first process forward.
Adora Sydney Jack, founder Gender Strategy Advancement International and author of the bestseller Politics, X and Power.
I should give you one.
Yeah, I need it. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
And good luck with all the work you do.
Thank you so much.